Okay, so we're going to continue on in our biochemistry unit. We're going to start talking about vitamins and minerals. So first of all, let's just kind of discuss the difference between a vitamin and a mineral. So a vitamin is an organic compound that is necessary in the diet for normal health and well-being. So if you don't have it, you're going to start having some health problems along the line. And these do not include amino acids or fatty acids, which we've talked about in the last couple of chapters. A mineral is an inorganic element which is necessary in the diet to maintain health. And so the main difference between vitamins and minerals is the organic word versus the inorganic. And just to kind of refresh your memory, organic is anything that contains carbon, and organic does not contain carbon, so no carbon. So that's the main difference between organic and inorganic. If you have an absence of vitamins or minerals, or maybe both, it can possibly cause some sort of deficiency diseases based on what vitamin or mineral you are missing. And so the Food and Nutrition Board actually sets dietary amounts that they believe is a good amount for individuals to intake. However, this can vary depending on if you're male, female, if you're your age, if you're a child versus if you're older, if you're pregnant. Sometimes it even matters different socioeconomic groups, so on and so forth. They can set different dietary reference intakes depending on what is the common for people to be missing or needing extra of, so on and so forth. Vitamins and minerals can actually have toxic effects if you take them in really large doses. So like for instance, there are approximately 4,000 cases per year of vitamin poisoning, and 3,200 of these are usually involved in children. And so if they get a hold of some, or if they're taking an incorrect dosage, it can actually cause some, not always toxic, but they can start to affect some other problems in your system. So it's kind of a balance. You need them, but you don't want too much of them. And so just to talk about some of the history behind vitamins, we have J.G.H. Kramer. What he did is he noticed that the enlisted men were more common to have scurvy than the officers in the Austrian army. And the reason, what he discovered was, officers were often given fruits and vegetables as part of their diet, but the enlisted men were not. And so what would happen is that the enlisted men had a greater occurrence of scurvy, because scurvy is caused by a lack in vitamin C. And scurvy, just to kind of refresh your memory, it can cause general weakness, anemia, it causes your gum disease, gum bleeding. It can make your skin hemorrhage or bleed really easily, and so it affects the structure of your body. And so since he noticed that it was vitamin C, and that's obviously a easy enough fix, you just need to eat more fruits and vegetables. And so in 1795, the British institutes a daily ration of lemon or lime juice to be served to the enlisted men, I think specifically sailors, to keep them in this vitamin so that they would not get scurvy. Another example of this was beriberi. This is a disease that was common in sailors, and they noticed it in Japanese sailors because these types of cultures eat a lot of rice. And so when on the boat, they needed food that could last a lot longer, so they would actually serve them rice with the hulls removed because it was absent of the oil, and so it allowed the rice to last longer. But however, when you removed all of the hulls, you actually took a lot of the vitamins away, and specifically they took away vitamin B1, and so it caused them to come down with the disease beriberi, which caused weight loss, emotional disturbances, impaired sensory perception. It can make you feel really weak. It can make you feel pain in your limbs, and it can also affect your heart rate, and it can actually make it very irregular. And all of this just because they were eating a different type of rice. A little bit more about history. In 1950, Elmer McCullum, and he's actually very prominent in the discovery of vitamins, and we'll see his name again, he discovered that cattle needed substance A and substance B in their diet. He didn't have a name for them, so he just called them A and B. And after we've continued to study, we actually gave them the names of vitamin A and vitamin B. A little bit more history. There are two main groups of vitamins. We have fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K, and these are often stored in your fat cells. water soluble, which are B and C, these are not stored in your body, so you're going to run out of these really quickly if they aren't constantly in your diet. And that is a test question right there. And so I would maybe remember that for when you come to your test in a little bit. It's really easy to overdose on fat-soluble vitamins because your body stores them, the body doesn't get rid of them. So if you get an overabundance of vitamin A, your body can start to store it, so that's when you start to overdose on it. However, our water-soluble, your body will take what it needs, and then whatever else it doesn't, it takes it out through your urine, kind of like you're flushing it down the drain, it just takes it out. So there's been a lot in the news lately about taking vitamin C, and it'll help you fight your colds and your viruses. And who knows, it might help, but if you take a ton of vitamin C, your body only needs so much, and so the rest of it will just get washed out with the rest of your waste from your body. And so let's talk about each one of these vitamins a little bit. So vitamin A is also called retinol, and it was discovered in 1913 by Elmer McCollum, which I told you you'd see his name several times. We can get vitamin A from fish liver oils, liver, milk products, egg yolk. I'm sure there's lots of other. Sometimes we can actually get vitamin A through green leafy vegetables because they actually contain beta-carotene, and our body can metabolize beta-carotene into 2 vitamin A molecules, and so there's lots of different ways we can get vitamin A. Vitamin A can actually be stored in the liver and released as necessary. And so if maybe you go through periods of time where you don't eat correctly, hopefully your body has enough vitamin A stored that you'll have enough in reserve. Vitamin A is very important for the growth and bone development in children, and importantly, your vision. Vitamin A is very important in your vision, and if you have a lack of vitamin A, and that can actually cause blindness. And so that's why in countries where malnutrition is an issue, you also have children that end up blind because they're not getting enough vitamin A. And a lack of vitamin A can actually cause night blindness in adults, and so kind of an interesting side effect. And this is the structure of vitamin A. So if we look at this picture, this is what vitamin A looks like down here at the bottom. And remember how I said beta-carotene can be broken down into 2 vitamin A's? Because if we look, this end looks very similar to this end, and this end looks very similar to this end. So if we just chop it in the middle, of course it's a little bit more complicated than that, but we can end up with 2 vitamin A molecules. Alright, so let's start talking about our vitamin B complex. Vitamin B was also discovered by McCollum. However, vitamin B is not just one vitamin, it is several vitamins. And the vitamin B complex is very important because these are needed to make coenzymes. And coenzymes are really small molecules that enzymes need to carry out their function. So if you remember, enzymes are what speed up the chemical reactions in our body. And so if we don't have our coenzymes, then the body's enzymes are not going to be able to work properly, and so then a lot of our chemical reactions aren't going to be going on as they should. And so the vitamin B vitamins allow our enzymes to work properly. So let's talk about each one. We have vitamin B1. This was discovered in 1934, and it has a name of thiamine. A lack of thiamine can cause muscular weakness and nerve inflammation, which can then lead to impairment of brain, nerves. It can cause some heart issues. Vitamin B1 is found in pork, liver, wheat germ, whole grain, enriched cereals, bread, soybeans, peanuts. All of these vitamins are found in several different sources, but these are the main sources. And as you notice as we go through this, a lot of the vitamins are found in meats. So people that are vegetarians have to be really careful, make sure they're getting everything that they need. Vitamin B2 can be called riboflavin. And if you're missing this vitamin, it can cause dryness or cracking of the lips. It can cause eye and tongue inflammation. It can cause anemia, dermatitis, poor nervous system function. And again, we can get this vitamin, again, if you notice, milk, liver, kidney, fish, eggs, and green leafy vegetables. And so you can see that a lot of these come from animal products. Vitamin B3 is niacin, and this can be used to make NAD and NADP, which is really important in our metabolism. And what it does is it actually allows our body to use and create NADH and NADPH, which are very important in the energy systems within our cells, and so that is why it's essential to metabolism. And if we have an absence of this vitamin, it can cause diarrhea, inflamed skin, mental deterioration. And we can also get sources of this vitamin through lean meat, fish, poultry, liver, kidney, milk, eggs, whole grain, and enriched cereals and breads, green leafy vegetables. So as you start to go through this, you're going to really start to see some common in the sources. And if you really pay attention, liver is almost on all of these sources, so that's a very good source for the vitamin B complex vitamins. Vitamin B5 is called pantothenic acid, and this is needed for carbohydrate metabolism. So this allows us to break down carbohydrates. It allows the enzymes to break down carbohydrates so our body can use them effectively. So if we have an absence of this, we're not going to be able to break down our carbohydrates very well. And so this is going to cause some issues in your digestional system. It's going to make your stomach upset. It's going to make you feel bloated, etc. And it can also lead to depression and mental confusion because it can affect the body's ability to use energy effectively. Again, the sources of these are liver, kidney, yeast, eggs, peanuts, whole grain cereals, tomatoes, broccoli, and salmon. Vitamin B6 is pyridoxine, and these are needed for metabolism of unsaturated fats and amino acids. So just like the last one helped us to break down carbohydrates, these are allowing us to break down unsaturated fats and amino acids. So it's allowing our body to break down things for fuel. If we have an absence of this vitamin, it can give us anemia, dermatitis, and a poor functioning nervous system because it affects our blood's ability to work properly. Vitamin B7 is called biotin, and this is again helps in our metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And if we have this, we are going to see a dermatitis. That's really the only main effect of it. There's several other side effects, I'm sure. And this isn't found in as much as the other ones were. But again, this one is fat soluble, and so you don't need a lot of it. And so this is going to be found in liver, brain, yeast, eggs, legumes, peanuts, and milk. Then there's vitamin B9. I told you there was a lot of vitamin Bs. This is called folic acid, and the absence of this can cause anemia, again, some issues in your digestional tract. It can also cause poor growth and development in children. And actually, if you are given folic acid, which is vitamin B9, while you are pregnant, and in the early enough stage, it can help prevent spina bifida, which is a birth defect. Vitamin B12 is called cyanocobalamin, and this actually is a giant molecule that contains 181 different atoms. And so this vitamin is very important in the production of our red blood cells. So if you do not have this vitamin, if you have a deficiency of this vitamin, you are going to have a very drastic case of anemia, which can actually be fatal, and it can also cause brain and nerve damage because it plays a very essential role in your red blood cells and their ability to transport oxygen. And so the sources of this are liver, meat, egg yolks, seafood, and milk, and there are no plant sources. So this is the one that vegetarians have to be really careful and make sure that they're getting enough of. However, you only need small quantities of it because we can store this in our liver relatively quickly because, again, it's fat soluble. Usually people with a deficiency have an autoimmune disease, which is destroying their vitamin B12. And usually it's not because you have a lack of vitamin B12. The next vitamin we're going to talk about is choline. This is actually included in the vitamin B complex because it can prevent fat deposition or deposits in the liver, and we can get these from the same sources as all the other vitamin B. So basically, in order to get your vitamin B complex, if you eat the same foods, you're going to get all the vitamin B complex vitamins that you need. Okay, moving on to the next vitamin. This would be vitamin C. This is called ascorbic acid, and sometimes it's actually called the anti-scurvy acid. Now, scurvy was the one I was just talking about with the sailors. This was identified in 1933 from lemon juice, And if you have an absence of this, it can cause scurvy, which is again swollen and bleeding gums, slow healing wounds, mental disturbances. And the reason that it causes all this is because vitamin C is a coenzyme that makes the enzymes in our body work in producing collagen. And if our body does not produce collagen, we're going to have a lot of structural issues because collagen is our main structural component that makes our cells strong and do what they're supposed to do. And so if we're missing that component, you're going to start having some structural issues. And like I just mentioned earlier, we can get sources of these from fruits and veggies like citrus fruits, tomatoes, strawberries, cabbage, broccoli, potatoes. And so for most people, especially around here, getting enough vitamin C is not an issue. It's really in the malnourished countries of the world. Vitamin D actually has two versions. There is D2 and D3, and these are the most important vitamin. However, either one will do. Your body can interchange them and use them how they're necessary. The reason that these are so important is because these are needed for calcium absorption in the bones and teeth. And so if you don't get enough vitamin D, your bones are not going to be able to absorb enough calcium, which can then lead to rickets, which is a disease in which your bones get very brittle and it's really easy to break them. And so the biggest source of vitamin D is sunlight, which is why it's usually a deficiency is not an issue because most people go outside throughout the day. In the wintertime, you get less of it. In the summertime, you get more of it. But it really becomes an issue for people who live in the North Pole, northern parts of Canada and Alaska, who don't go outside much because of the weather. It was an issue back when in like concentration camps and stuff like that, when people were not allowed to move freely about. But you can also get it in fish liver oils, and since it is such an important vitamin, they've actually started adding it in milk, and so it's called fortified milk, and this basically has an addition of both vitamin A and vitamin D to make sure that children get plenty of it so that their bones are going to grow the way that they are supposed to. Vitamin E actually comes in several forms as well, and this one is really hard to avoid. And since it's so hard to avoid, we actually have not been able to fully study the absence of vitamin E, so we're really not sure what it could cause. One thing that we do know is that vitamin E serves as an antioxidant, which basically inhibits the oxidation of other molecules within your body, and so it helps to control the chemical reactions that are happening. And we can get vitamin E from, the list was really, really long, but wheat germ, green leafy vegetables, peanut oil, vegetable oil, nuts, legumes, fish, meat, eggs, milk. I mean, the list went on and on and on out of your book. Vitamin K is necessary in the liver to produce prothrombin, which is a protein very important to your blood. It actually helps in the clotting of your blood. So if you are deficient in vitamin K, you're going to have a lot of internal hemorrhaging, and that could possibly lead to brain damage. However, this is relatively, if you have absence of this, you can take it as a vitamin, and it should supply enough for your body to prevent this, as long as it is noticed early enough. If this happens in children, it's really hard for us to pick up on what's going on in babies before they're damaged, before they have brain damage, etc. The sources of vitamin K, like I said, they're K1 comes from leafy vegetables. K2 can be produced by bacteria in your intestinal tract, and so this is why usually we don't have enough problems with getting enough vitamin K, is because the bacteria that's in your intestinal tract can produce all that they need. But like I said, if this happens in newborns don't have the bacteria isn't present in their intestinal tract yet, and so they can have a deficiency in vitamin K relatively easily, and it's again hard to diagnose. And then we can always take K3, which is a synthetic version that you can take in a vitamin if you're not getting enough from other sources. All right, so now let's start talking about some minerals. Minerals are elements that are really necessary in the diet, and the most common that are present in our bodies are oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. So if you have an insufficient amount of these, basically you're going to be entering in the stage of starvation. So these are what the majority of your minerals that you need to be. But then we have two subclasses. The first one is macronutrients, and these we need more than 100 milligrams per day. And so there are several of those, so we're going to go through each one of those a little bit like we did with vitamins. So the first macronutrient we need is calcium. This helps in your bones and your teeth. It can also help regulate the bodily processes such as nerve signals, muscle contraction, blood clotting, Calcium is very important in the transport in and out of um, moving signals back and forth between your brain and your muscles. The next macronutrient is phosphorus. This is again really important in your bones and your teeth. It is also needed in DNA and RNA. And again, it is the part of the energy molecule ATP, which is really important in ATP is energy, and so that's how our cellular respiration works properly. And so if we don't produce enough, if we don't have enough phosphorus, we can't produce enough ATP, so we won't have enough energy. The next macronutrient is sodium. This is important in blood plasma and other bodily fluids. This also maintains water balance in the cells, and so sodium kind of plays a big role in making sure that the water inside our cells and the water outside our cells is semi-level so that everything can work the way that it's supposed to. The next one is chlorine. This is important in cell transport and in the stomach. So both chlorine and potassium are important in cell transport. Things need to go into and out of the cell relatively easily. And so chlorine, which is negatively charged, potassium, which is positively charged, will bond with atoms and move them into and out of the cell. And so that's one importance of those. Chlorine is actually part of your stomach acid, which digests all of your food, and it is actually hydrochloric acid. So if we didn't have enough chlorine, we wouldn't have enough stomach acid, so we couldn't digest our food enough. The next one I want to talk about is magnesium. This is found in all tissues in your body, and this is honestly needed to make sure that your enzymes are functioning properly. And so some various sources of this are milk, cheese, grains, vegetables, and this is why this is found in chlorophyll, because it's found in chlorophyll, which is what makes vegetables green, and so that's why when we eat vegetables, we can get some significant amount of magnesium. Another one is sulfur. Sulfur is found in our amino acids. It helps the linkage between making them in the certain shape that they are supposed to be in. And they can also be found in vitamin B1 and B, I believe 7. I think I forgot the 7 and put the and sign instead. All right, so let's move down to micronutrients. Micronutrients, we need less than 100 milligrams per day. Macro was more than 100. Micro is less than 100. Some of these are iron. Iron is very, very, very important in our hemoglobin and our myoglobin and our mitochondria. If you have a lack of iron, this can actually cause anemia, which can then give you all of the symptoms of tired and not enough energy, and you just can't seem to function at the level that you're used to. Another one is manganese. This is very important and needed in the tendons and in your bones. Copper is another one. This aids in the storage and release of iron into the hem, which is part of your hemoglobin. And so copper is very important in making sure that the iron gets and is part of your hemoglobin properly. Another one is iodine. This is actually needed in your thyroid. The thyroid actually controls your metabolism, so if you don't have enough iodine, then your metabolism can start to have issues and your thyroid can start to have issues. But we've honestly already fixed that problem, and so now when you go to the store, you buy iodized salt that has a little bit of iodine in it, so that makes sure everybody gets the amount of iodine that they need. Another micronutrient is zinc. This is needed to aid in enzyme function. Cobalt is actually found in vitamin B12 and in other enzymes. Chromium is needed to aid in your body's metabolism of glucose. Glucose is sugars that usually plants produce. Another one is selenium. This is an antioxidant again, so it helps prevent your bodies from, or things in your bodies from being oxidized, and so it helps your bodily functions and your chemical reactions that happen. It actually specifically helps your liver functioning. You only need a small amount, and you only need a small amount. When I say a small amount, you need less than 200 micrograms. And if you get more than 200 micrograms, it can actually be toxic and cause some other issues. Fluorine. Fluorine is needed and necessary to retain calcium in bones, and it also helps harden the enamel on your teeth to help keep your teeth healthier, which is why a lot of times they add it into your water so that when you drink it, you get the fluorine added to your teeth. And then we have molybdenum, and this is basically really needed for enzyme function. And then last but not least, we have Vanadium,